Hi, good evening, and welcome to the Comix Experience Graphic Novel of the Month Club for the month of May. Our book this month is the fabulous Cannonball by Kelsey Wroten, who is here live and in person. Yay! And I want to thank our sponsors I always have to remember to thank the sponsors at The Beat. Thank you for The Beat for helping sponsor the show and getting us out to a wider audience. Comix, yeah. Hi, Kelsey. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me. This has been awesome.
Yeah, super appreciate it. So the first question is always why comics? Of all the things you could be doing in the world, why is it comics? Why does comics speak to you?
I mean, this is a question I probably asked myself loads of times because it takes forever and it's really hard. So like, why? I think it would be because I've always loved drawing. Growing up as a kid, that's like the thing I would do. I was an only child for a little while, and then my brother and sister came along, and I kept my only child tendencies of like hanging out in my room by myself, and like drawing was the thing I would do during that time. And I think later on I started to get more interested in like storytelling and writing, and it just seemed to make sense. And it's also like what I would do. Instead of like passing notes during like math class or something, we would like pass comics back and forth that we were making.
Well, that's cool.
That were at that time just like Joan and Vasquez like ripoffs, but yeah. And I think that's why I still can't do like fractions. It's because I just didn't pay attention during the entirety of like middle school math.
Right. What do you remember reading when you were a kid?
Like what? I mean, the thing that got me into drawing them, I think actually probably was like watching Invader Zim, and then like getting into like whenever I was in middle school, and then like reading his other comics, which are totally like not appropriate for like a 10-year-old, 11-year-old to be reading, or whatever age I was. I was probably 13. But that was probably some of like the first stuff that I saw that was like not like Garfield or like. I loved The Far Side whenever I was like a kid. I don't know like what it was about Gary Larson that like spoke to me, but that's actually, I don't know. Like I probably drew some like newspaper strips at some point, and who knows where those are. Yeah. When
you started getting into Joan and Vasquez, how did you find out about Johnny? Yeah. Right, because Invader Zim was its own kind of universe.
Yeah. I think, Johnny, just on the internet, I think. I was just, like, reading whatever I could. Yeah, but, yeah, like, that would be it in, like, Squee and stuff. And it, like, kind of,
So was it scans you were reading, or?
Yeah, it was scans. Yeah, okay. I don't think I would have been able to, like, own that book. Like,
well, that's what I was going to ask. That was my next question, was, like, was there an adult who took you to the comic shop to turn you on to the good stuff?
Yeah. No, I didn't have that. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Did you go to school to study art?
Kind of like I started out. I didn't go to like an arts high school or anything, and I know a lot of people did, but I didn't. I started out going to like community college studying computer programming, but I was kind of like really bad at it because of the whole math thing.
Right.
And but. I liked, going on to like GeoCities and like programming websites for like my favorite Pokemon whenever I was in middle school too. So I was like, oh, why not? And so I ended up being really bad at it. And like the only thing that in college that was like bringing me any sort of like joy was my elective art classes. So I ended up getting like a letter of recommendation for transfer to an art school, to the Kansas City Art Institute.
Okay.
Whenever, I did go to, and then I studied illustration.
So illustration in general, not comics particular or anything.
No, there wasn't like a particular, like specific comics program there.
Not in Kansas City, probably.
No, there wasn't one.
Yeah. Did they, were you doing minis at the time, or?
I think, like, I was doing comics, like, while I was studying computer programming, and, like, I don't know, like my girlfriend like dumped me, and I made this comic called Apartment that I showed my my professor at the time, and like he was basically just like, you've got to like change what you're doing. Like this is what you should be doing. Like, don't, cause like it's.
Oh, he was being positive about it.
Yeah, he was being positive. Like
I took that the other way
he was
around.
like, never show anybody
Don't
this.
do this.
No, like.
Just your fine illustration.
Yeah. But, well, I mean, like this was like before I even started focusing on illustration at all. So it was kind of this thing that I was like, okay, like I'm kind of listless and directionless. I'll do this and see where it goes. So yeah, and here I am. Yeah.
Oh, a 2-year school, 4-year school?
The Kansas City Art Institute is like a 4-year art college. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And
it's not like one of the art institutes.
Sure.
Yeah.
And were you doing comics by the end of it, or?
Well, I did them throughout.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of like open-ended projects that I ended up doing comics for. And we had one class junior year that was focused on comics, but the rest of it was like, it wasn't like a comics program.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So like whenever it came time to do like my like thesis or choose what I was going to do for that, I pretty much exclusively did minis and comics for that, of which one of them is the mini for Cannonball. Yeah. So
you did it as how big is the mini?
I have it with me.
We'd love to see that.
Yeah. So I brought some stuff. So it's like maybe like 32 or this is like a black and white one too. It's not even like a great print, but yeah, it's like, I don't know. What do we want to do with this? Yeah. I have some color ones somewhere, but this is kind of an artifact at this point.
This is a work in progress. I love it.
Yeah.
It's you can see where her style's going, but it's
not there yet. No.
It's cool.
Yeah. And then I ended up sending that.
It's great.
Sending that to Vice, and it got published in Vice while I was in undergrad, and that kind of like.
Vice, the website?
Yeah.
Vice? Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
I didn't know that. Oh,
yeah. Cool. Yeah. So like the kind of skeleton that I worked off of. Yeah. So like I had this one, and then I had this other like graphic novel idea that was kind of more of like a fantasy story called Grave. That it was kind of like a queer fantasy story, which is still something that maybe I'll pick up, but. I tried to kind of like shop around both of these ideas. And by that I mean I was just handing out minis at conventions. So I handed this out at TCAF in 2015, which is whenever I graduated from college. And Uncivilized was the publisher that got back to me.
The only publisher that got back to you?
Annie Koyama was like, keep making work, like this is good. But the only like interest in like actually publishing it was
Was it Tom or
it was Jordan actually?
Jordan, okay.
Yeah.
And when they got back to you, was it? I mean, what did they say to you?
I think like I kind of learned this later, like that it's kind of not the way that you're supposed to to pitch comics to publishers, but. For what I know, but I mean just in general, because I don't know if it would work again. But I like there was some interest, and like basically they asked me to do like the next steps, like show me like a synopsis of what the book would be, like how it, because I was like I like this, but I want to make it into like something meatier.
Okay.
And like more of a character study and like.
And did you have this in mind from your 32 pages? Or something
I didn't think it would be that long.
Okay,
but yeah, I ended up like thinking about all of the things that I wanted to explore, and a lot of like the notes that I was keeping on like ideas that I hadn't like fully fleshed out yet, and they just all seemed to like click into place. And so whenever I was writing like the synopsis and like the outline for all of the chapters and like how long I wanted it to be, it just kept, growing. So then I like did a sample chapter, which I also brought, which is closer to like what the style actually ended up. I think that's stapled, but this was
pretty
just
similar to the book.
Yeah. With like the color palette.
Color palette, certainly. Yeah. It's interesting you had already decided the color palette this early in the game. That's
Well, I thought it was working, so I just what if it's not broken? No. But yeah, so this was, and this chapter is in the book, but just like drawn more in the consistent style. Yeah. Yeah. So I did that sample like chapter to be like, okay, so like this isn't really in the mini at all, but I was like, this is the kind of stuff that I wanted to kind of focus on. Because I think this evolved from, there's like one scene where like Caroline's with a group of friends and she says something that she believes in and they all laugh at her.
Right.
So I was like, well, it kind of just read as a gag in like the story. So or in the short. So I was like, that's something I want to latch onto and make bigger. And there's a lot of other moments like that. And of course there's like completely new aspects too, because I don't know how you could make 266 pages out of 32.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So you had a written synopsis. How detailed is that synopsis?
I think whenever I was doing it, I wanted to be as detailed as possible because of just the nature of, because like now I think I kind of understood this then, but now I understand this. Whenever you're pitching a graphic novel, like this is part of a pitch. Like you would have like a synopsis of like approximate page numbers, like what, obviously the synopsis of your book, like how many chapters it is and what happens in those chapters, like in a paragraph or whatever. And I started like building that and then kind of trying to get as like specific as I could just to latch onto the ideas and not lose them.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like I don't have the pitch document, but yeah, maybe I should put one in here just to keep it all in. But yeah, like I think I got pretty specific. And then, after that I started like, it was all written, right? It wasn't, that's the way I think first with comics.
Sure.
It's script.
Yeah.
So yeah, then I started working on scripting and like getting more specific and stuff like that. Yeah.
So how long would you say the synopsis was?
I don't know. Like with just like the outline, it was probably only like a couple of pages.
Oh, so like 3 or 4 or 5.
Yeah. Most 5. Yeah. But then the script is like, I have that too. The script is like that. Like
nice.
I had to like break it up into like stapled portions because but yeah. So it's all there, and then changing words. But yeah, so I kind of like, I think whenever I'm thinking about comics, I think about it as like almost like film, Yeah,
and it looks like you're very loosely breaking it down. It's not page by page per se. It's kind of scene by scene.
It's like what needs to happen before the next chapter.
But what needs to happen could be 1 page. It could be 5 pages, right? In each of these little things. Yeah.
I think like over time, I started to understand like what, or like be able to estimate based on like how I draw, like how long, like does a paragraph translate to, 3 pages, or does a paragraph translate to 6 panels? Like it's, I would kind of understand like what it would be. And I think I've gotten better at that since this, because I thought this was going to be 150 pages long.
Yeah.
And it's like almost twice that.
Right. And what's the editorial reaction to this?
I had free reign. I asked if anything like felt out of whack, but Jordan and Tom were kind of like, go with whatever it is that you want to do, and we'll be there just kind of as like the readers to make sure that it's understood. Were
they giving you feedback at this early stage, or did they wait until you were drawing it a little bit?
I sent the script, but I don't think I really got a whole lot of feedback on the script. There might have been like a few like unclear or whatever things, or like I don't know, but nothing like super major. And I think it's all because I had so much of the skeleton laid out already, so they were kind of like, okay, I understand, like this is what you've basically got it, just we're filling in.
Were you nervous at going from 32 pages to 150, let alone 266,
No, I think this is what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to work on a larger project. And up until this time, with starting Cannonball, I hadn't been able to, just because for one thing, like I couldn't pay to print it. And the other just being like the impetus to do it wasn't maybe there.
Sure.
But I knew that I wanted to. And so like when given like the sort of like, okay, like make your case for this situation, like I was like really excited. And not so, I mean, I don't get nervous about working on things that like this, because it's like it's for me ultimately.
Sure.
So I'm my harshest critic.
Sure.
At the end of the day.
I guess I just wonder about the scope of a project like that.
Oh.
And, you know, because it's not I can do this in a month and a half. It's I'm spending the next year doing this.
Yeah, like at least.
Yeah. It's the difference between, you know, sprinting and running a marathon, I suppose.
Yeah. I hadn't done anything like on this scale before, but I had been working as like a freelance illustrator, like with deadlines for about like a year or so, whenever we finally started to, you know, put the pedal to the metal with it. Mm-hmm. So I understood that like a contract's a contract. Like if you say you're going to do something, you have to do it. And I kind of, I don't know, I've never had a problem turning things in on time. I just like looked at it and then was like, this is how many pages I need to get done by this time. And then broke it down into like these tiny chunks that were super manageable. And then just kind of did it a little bit at a time. And I know that like my process for it was like straight through beginning to end. But I think I've heard some different like approaches that sound way more fun. Like going to the parts that you feel like drawing that day and doing it that way, because you're bound to make like more interesting drawings than like drawing a car on a day you don't feel like drawing a car. Right. But you know, you live and you learn.
Yeah, we've read, you know, because we've interviewed an awful lot of cartoonists, right? Yeah. I've literally heard every possible way of doing it. It's great. Nobody gives me the same answer twice.
Yeah.
I think my favorite was kind of Klaus, because he says he starts at page 1 and writes it all the way through, and then he goes back to page 1 and he pencils it all the way through, and then he goes back to page 1 and he inks it all the way through, and then he goes back to page 1 and he letters it all through. And I'm like, wow, that would drive me insane, like even contemplating doing something like that.
But it makes sense to me that would be a good way to do it, because ultimately like you have to make sure that the text lives on the page, and like, and adding text last would obviously like mean that it's competing with the art, because you picked the art, you didn't pick the letters. And I don't know, but lettering can be very like very chill, but you can't get too chill because you'll just spell everything wrong. But it's not, you don't have to like think that hard whenever you're rewriting things you've already written.
You did hand letter the book?
I made a font.
You made a font. Okay, I was going to say it looks a little. Yeah.
But I've hand lettered other things, and I think in the future that's the way I want to go. Because like this was
a font from your handwriting.
Yeah, no, I made it. Yeah, just because it's so long. But I think in the future I would approach it with a more like being. I think this being my first book, to go back to the nervousness question, I think there was a nervousness of it being like not slick enough, you know? And I think that I made it too slick. I went too far into the slick direction. Whereas like in
terms of style, you mean, or
like it's very legible. It's very very clean. Like there's not any like, because in my other like illustration work, I'm very messy. Like that's what my natural inclination was, and I was fighting that. So with this book, I was like, okay, I'm going to make this one, manageable for like the timetable that I needed to complete it in, and two, like feel like super like, you know, streamlined. And the book I did after that, which I have some examples from that one too, which it's kind of a weird timeline. Like I finished this book in like around Christmas of like, I guess it would have been like 2017.
Really? This is a year and a half old?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it just took a year and a half to come out, yeah.
Why?
There was just some like lineup changes.
Okay.
Yeah, because you know, you want to release things during certain times.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all it was. And I was like, well, you know, I've already, because I finished it on time. So just So people know I didn't go over my deadline on this book, even though it was exponentially larger than it was meant to be.
Yeah.
And it was really hard because I was also juggling like my freelance work and doing this at the same time.
Yeah.
But, so there was a year and a half in time where I was just kind of sitting on this and,
Wow.
So I was like, well, I want to do another book. So then I did this, like, I would say, I guess, a graphic novella. It's like under 90 pages. That's like a lot. This is the copy that I have that I, printed, that it was one of the first print runs that I like marked up to like fix it.
Oh,
but,
okay.
Yeah, but it's like a lot messier. And I think that's kind of the direction I want to go in the future, because it's like, it feels more like direct and like, I don't know. I feel like happier looking at it because I know like these pages like exist in reality. Yeah. And not like as a series of pieces of paper with like pencils on them and not the color and not the ink.
Okay.
Yeah, because I did most of that book digitally.
Oh, okay.
There are certain parts that aren't, and it's the parts that are her book. I did that like with graphite.
Okay, and so you working on a Wacom or whatever?
Yeah. And I think whenever, I don't know, like if Wacom, like working digitally purely on anything is right for me, because it starts to feel like the thing doesn't exist after a while, because you haven't touched anything for so long. You're just like looking at a picture of it.
Sure.
It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, again, different artists have different feelings towards that. There are people who I don't think could draw on a piece of paper if you forced them to.
Yeah.
But this one was drawn pen and paper.
Yeah, it was. I used like it was almost as if I was fighting against like the impulses that I had in Cannonball, where I found the worst brush I had. It was like totally fucked up. Yeah. And I just used that one on like pieces of trash paper. Right. And I was just like, this is great. Like I was so excited while I was making, and I was excited while I was making Cannonball too. Like that's another thing that I've heard from some creators where their most exciting moment is when the book comes out. Right. And for me, it was like the chances I got to work on it, because it was like so much fun. I don't know. But I guess there are times where you'd be like, I don't really want to draw this. But like I was just excited to have like this thing that I was making that was so huge. Sure. And like, I don't know. That gave me joy, I guess. And now that it's out, I'm like, I have to talk about it. I thought it was done. Yeah, well, let's talk about it a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, now we're talking about it. That's the whole point of it.
When you approach the page, the blank page, have you thumbnailed them out ahead? Yeah. Are you doing that on paper?
Yeah. Okay. I've got that. I don't think I can think like that digitally. So like we had this already. So then with that, this is my like little archive of this book. This is the timeline of the events in the book. So I just had that hanging up on my wall just to make sure nothing happened out of order.
It's like chapter by chapter or something?
Yeah, like, so because I started writing it in like 2014 or 15 or something. And I was like, what year does it?
Turn that one to the...
Yeah, it's just,
it's like an actual graph.
Well, it was just like,
I've not seen that before. I like that.
It's just taped to my wall. Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that nothing, like if you were referring to time periods in the book, that it made sense in a linear format. Since, you work on something for such a long period of time that you stop like remembering what you did. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So this is all of Cannonball in thumbnails.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So like the page numbers are different because I ended up adding some stuff later. But yeah, like you'll know they like these, like you probably like this part's pretty iconic. Like yeah, like that's there it is.
Yeah, no, these are pretty clean. Let me flip it just so
they're super small.
Thumbnails too. You can really see what's going on in each. There are people who have show us thumbnails. You're like, I have no idea what's happening in this, but I can basically tell panel to panel what's happening.
Yeah, and like I can identify a page, So yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So then
draw a better fucking airplane.
Oh yeah, did I write that? Yeah. Yeah. I like there's like another, like the critical version of me comes in and will be like, okay, this sucks, make it better. Like I just write that note. But yeah. And some of them are looser than others, but yeah, the whole book's here.
So were you thumbnailing this chapter by chapter as you were drawing it? Did you do it all at once? I mean, I
did it all at once, and I just went through like this, and like these here, they correspond to
the numbers in the balloons. Yeah,
they correspond to these. Yeah, and that's just the way it had to work for me to make sense of it. So like, you know, page 17 is like page 17 on here. Yeah. So, yeah. So I just had these two things open next to each other, and like whenever I finished a part of it, you know, whatever. So the bubble is like the page number, I don't know, and then the number next to it is the word balloon number.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's all just a graph.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Graphs. Yeah, I did pay attention in geometry.
Comics are all about rhythm and grids
and
and timing, right?
Yeah.
And so it's important to be able to do that.
I brought a lot of graphs to look at.
Yeah.
I feel like, I should have just made a PowerPoint full of graphs. I'm like, this is my comic in pie chart form.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you with these various steps? How long did the script take you, would you say?
I feel like the script, like, I mean, I think I took like half a year on like the script.
Okay.
Yeah. And then like maybe like a year and a half, almost maybe 2, like drawing it.
Okay.
But yeah.
But like the thumbnails themselves were...
That was like a part of the drawing.
Oh, okay. So you're including that as part of the script. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, the script was like, I don't know, like getting into that was like, I think that's almost the most difficult part for me, you know, because it's looking at like a blank page that you draw on is so much easier because you can just make a mark and it's no longer blank. But whenever I mean, that sounds dumb, but it's true.
No, that
like this is in art school, this is something that my professor would say because he'd be like, if you're ever intimidated, just and now it's begun. So keep going. But whenever you're writing something, you just end up erasing it.
Yeah.
Because you just are like, nope, that's not it.
Right.
It's like, it doesn't matter that you wrote something.
Yeah.
If it's not right, you have to get rid
Sure.
of it instead of work off of it.
Right.
Or at least like for me, it feels that way.
Yeah. No, I think it's true too that you can draw a figure that's not anatomically correct, but you can't take a word that's misspelled.
Or
right?
just,
do you know what I mean?
Like you can't really fake it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's no, and there's like a lot more forgiveness for drawing than there is for like bad storytelling. So, or maybe it depends what your whole vibe is, but I didn't want to try and like, breeze my way through the script. Like that was the part that really has like a lot of my heart into it that, like, I don't think I would change too much about, because like the art, I have feelings about what would I do now? Would it be different? Which I think like probably 100% of people say about like their book after it's done, especially if it's been a year and a half. But as far as the story goes, like I feel like the story it's done and it's the way it was meant to be. Yeah. And like, I do feel that.
So let me ask you this: you're young, you're not
like how old do you think I am?
I would say you're in your mid-20s. I said outside actually that you were 6. But that's I'm 53.
I got like carded earlier today, and like it was like I got carded like very intensely. Like they were like scraping at it just to be like, is this real?
Wow. Okay.
So this is just my life. I'm never gonna look like an adult. I'm 28.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're still young. That's like almost half my age.
I always wonder though what people.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
But there's a real depth to these characters, especially Caroline, but everybody around her too. And there's a real, I mean, a lot of times when you read writing from 20-year-olds, it's kind of shallow. Doesn't really mean anything, but this all felt really true to me.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's because when I was writing it, I felt like there was something I needed to like expel from my being, which I think Caroline kind of is this totally negative like person that lives inside of me. And I wanted to see like, because I started the mini whenever I was in my senior year of college. So of course I was thinking a lot of the things that I was writing about. But I started writing it, like fleshing it out, like a year or so out, because that's just whenever things started to move. So I started like revisiting the feelings I was having, like these sort of, I don't know, like when you're in school, it's like your portfolio or like your like artwork is like, it's kind of the way that you achieve self-esteem or something. It's like there's like a kind of social hierarchy kind of structured around it, which is interesting, especially if, and I'm sure that's probably true of any sort of schooling, like if you're a good student, people like respect you more than say high school and you're a nerd. But like in college, I think that people actually are like, okay, this is the person who's going to like do something. So I think that I wanted to like explore that attachment to artwork too. And so whenever, and how it's not really like necessarily like symbiotic, like it doesn't actually make you like yourself more, no matter what you get for it. So that's like, I mean, that's the heart of the story right there. Yeah.
Sure.
But then the other part of it that I wanted to explore was like, what is success, you know?
Well, that's the part that I find the most interesting, that a young person successfully was able to write, because a lot of the dialogue, particularly at the end, when it's all the old bitter, washed up writers sitting drinking at a table by themselves, and I'm like, how the hell did you get that? You know, like. Who are the bums you're hanging out with? I mean, I would think that your experience at that point would not be that level of jadedness about not just creativity, but the sort of the process of the business of art. You know.
Well, at that
point, a lot of clarity about the business of art in here that really shocked me for someone so young.
I had been working like I said, whenever I fleshed it out, I had been working as a freelance illustrator for a second. I'm gonna get a drink of water. I'm tongue tied.
By all means, take your time.
Yeah. Okay.
Take your time.
Yeah. Let me.
We can answer everything slowly. We're in no rush.
Yeah. So I had been working as a freelance illustrator, and I was kind of starting to understand that like you can't like, again, comparing it to like my school experience, and like the sort of like who has the best voice sort of thing, like that being like the social hierarchy, and I mean, or whatever it is, voice, like execution, blah blah blah. Like I mean, with artworks, like going into the working world, that stopped mattering, and what mattered more was just like being around to do the work, and like so I was, and also like you could, you know, do sketches of like these really cool weird ideas that in school would have gotten you like, you know, a pat on the back, and like people would be like, oh yeah, oh shit, like that's it, like you did it. And like there's no winner in critique, but you felt like you won critique. Like that also doesn't necessarily like translate, because whenever you're doing sketches, like the process for an editorial illustration, for instance, would be they send you an article, you send them a series of ideas in the form of thumbnails, which is probably why my thumbnails look like they do, because that's like what I have to do all the time.
Sure.
Like they have to be legible. And so, you know, I would send like, okay, here's like a cool idea with like a dragon. And then like, and the editorial piece will be about like iPhones and I don't know, offices. And I'd be like, okay, like let's make it a metaphor. And then every time we'll pick whatever the most literal representation is.
Sure, of course.
Or not every time. Whenever you have an art director who like sees you, like it's great, but that doesn't happen all the time, especially whenever you're just starting out, because people don't know you yet. So I was kind of like constantly drawing these things that I didn't really want to, but at the same time I was doing exactly what I went to school to do.
Sure.
So I was like, what the fuck is happening? Like, like this is nothing like I imagined. So I think what those, like the bitter people that you're talking about are just like myself already tired. And I'm still doing that, by the way. Like, I am still a freelance illustrator. Please continue hiring me. This is how I pay my bills. And there are like loads of, like, since then I've like gotten like into like a lot of cooler stuff, but especially starting out, I was doing like some pretty like weird stuff that I wouldn't necessarily choose. But yeah, I think that's what that was. And then also like, you know, whenever you would get to talk to like professionals with, you know, with their mask off, they'd be like, oh, it's hard out there. Like, you're never going to fucking pay off your student loans and stuff like that.
Right.
Like, that's just the reality.
Right.
There are no old freelancers, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, oh God. So yeah, that was like I don't know. I was just kind of translating all of these experiences. Like, I think whenever you fictionalize something, it helps you really like dissect it a little bit better than if you're just writing, you know, autobio or something.
Well, I mean, I'll say you've got a good ear. You were listening well, because I think it came off very well and very kind of wise above your years. I mean, it was, you know, it's.
I mean, I think I was essentially writing this whenever I was like 24.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a little while, but I still feel good about it.
Yeah. No, as you should, because it's pretty rare that we find a first graphic novel from someone that's as sophisticated as this one is, you know, and that's as deep as it is. So very, very good on you.
Good job.
Yeah, good job. So you said it took you roughly a year and a half to draw the book. Does that include the coloring and the lettering and everything?
Yeah, with the way that I operated once I had the thumbnails, script, pencils all done, which that was all like on paper. I took it into, you know, Photoshop, and I would ink and color the pages at once, like as spreads, so they could see how they looked side by side, and then just kind of went through just yeah. So
if it's a page and a half, a year and a half, and it's 266, it's
you got to do that
a page every other day, basically.
Yeah,
give or take.
Yeah, and usually they would end up getting like clumped onto the weekends. I would just do a bunch of them, or whatever, whenever I was had the time to do it, because of, you know, trying to also make ends meet in the meantime. Yeah.
So you'd like power through 3 or 4 pages at a time.
Yeah, but it didn't. If I got like, you know, tired or something, I would like quit because I didn't want to like get sloppy. But yeah, that would be it. And my favorite days were the days that I would just, you know, like go into my studio, which was my room, and have the whole day just to work on the book. Yeah. Like those, I would just like, you know, light a candle and like be like, you know, this is my me time. This is like what I want to do more than anything else. Yeah. Yeah.
As a freelancer, how much of your time is spent chasing the next gig as opposed to executing the gig?
At first, like a lot was spent like promoting and like doing work for, you know, stuff like Instagram, just to like keep your name popping up and blah, 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 getting followers, whatever. So like people like see a number and they like attribute a value to it, which I don't think is necessarily true, but it does like, and like there are plenty of like, you know, pretty famous cartoonists and illustrators who just don't use Instagram at all. Sure. So obviously it doesn't really like mean anything, but whenever I was trying to get my like stuff going, it really did help. Just because it like showed I was working. Yeah.
I was super impressed when I went to your website. You had an actual video.
Yeah.
I don't usually see cartoonists making videos where they're talking to the camera. Like,
yeah, that was actually,
I think, you know,
that was actually like in Kansas City, there was this ad agency that was wanting to like showcase like, you know, Kansas City artists or whatever. And they filmed that. And I was like, sweet. Now I have it, but it's all the stuff on there is like, you know, 3 years old. I've got like with the talking about like I don't know, your voice maturing. I think my voice is maturing in my art a little later than like in the way that I talk, like the way that I write, I think. Okay. I mean, if that's what I don't know what I'm saying, but I think that I am closer to the quick whenever I'm writing than when I'm drawing. There's still like a certain amount of layer of protection that I'm building or cutting through, I guess.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. Do you want to do comics full time? Is that what you would do if you could?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's, if I could, that would be it, you know, because then I would just, you know, the writing part would just be like me, like for weeks on end, just thinking and like trying to figure out like what's the most intriguing like story that I can tell that I'm going to just sink my teeth into, and it's going to be like fucking amazing. It's like it's sort of like, I don't know, probably anybody who has like a task that they do by themselves, like they will enter like a sort of like meditative state where all you can like hear is your own breathing. That's comics. I could cry.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. Let me turn it to you guys. Maybe, do you guys have any questions, or are you gonna say no and then I'm gonna have to keep talking? I can do that. I mean,
yeah, you're asking good questions.
Well, I congratulate you. It's really, I also had a great time reading it, and I also agreed on the depth of. Your sense of pacing and the dialogue is really amazing. And my question is kind of inane, which is
perfect. I love that. Don't make it too hard, please.
No, it's really simple. So what's with the white? So sometimes she has a headband and sometimes she has a yarmulke.
Oh, that's just like a hair shine thing that I was drawing.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I figured, but it was kind of funny. But the headband was kind of funny. And the switching.
Yeah, I don't know. I drew it and I just liked it, and I kept it as sort of like a symbol for her hair being really greasy or something.
Yeah, no, it's a very dynamic effect too, right?
Yeah.
It's a striking effect, and I think
she's the only one who has it.
Right.
I think so as well. Yeah.
That's why.
So in like the past, like she still has it, and
Yeah. I was wondering if it had some significance or something.
Yeah. I mean, it could, right? Like I could make something up right now. Let's see. So whenever she encounters Cannonball, who's ascended with the halo, like this could be like some sort of analogous, whatever the fuck. I can't pronounce things sometimes. Symbology. Who cares? Yeah, there it is. Write it. Print it.
Yeah. It's like the halo's on her head.
Yeah, but it's not.
But not over her head because she hasn't achieved yet.
Yeah, and probably never could because of her own misgivings about herself.
Yes, well, she's really angry. Carolyn's really angry.
Yeah, I think that was one of the big like negative feelings because I think, I don't know, there's like a little bit of fear to be angry about things that you should be grateful for.
But she's a hard worker too, no? I mean,
yeah.
Deserves what she.
Yeah.
Her successes too. Right?
Yeah, I think that was another thing that I was like exploring from school, because in school it was almost like this sort of like pissing contest of who could like not sleep, like who could make the most work and not sleep, and that was just the way it was, so that was also in there.
But how many members of your class have their own book?
There are a lot of really talented people in my class,
okay.
yeah.
Right.
And they will surely have books at some point. I mean, if they're interested in making them.
But now.
Yeah.
You're the first one though?
I don't know, maybe. Yeah. Yeah. That I know. I mean, there's different kinds of books, like people have done children's books and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. I don't throw stones.
Yeah, no.
I live in a glass house.
I'm trying to get you to throw stones.
Yeah.
What was your favorite part of the book to do?
I think that I liked all the parts with the Cannonball character in it. Like to me, like she was sort of like, I don't know, like really funny to me. I don't know, but she was like her character design was just like something I had been doodling in my sketchbook, and I was like, what is this? Like let's like. Constructing stories that are more short form that you don't have to get as involved with. Usually I like would cast them like from my sketchbook, like, and also like, yeah. So the Cannonball wrestler was like this thing I kept drawing, and it sort of became like the symbology of like being super strong and like resilient and like nothing can get you down. So like her meeting Caroline, who's like the opposite of that. And also like, you know, this character is very benevolent too. And is kind of like seeing the big picture instead of, you know, being caught up in whatever's happening at that moment. So like the scene with her by the lake was probably when I was I think the reason why I drew it straight from the beginning to that, like this way, was that I was kind of making myself wait. Where I was like, okay, I know there's like several parts that I really want to draw. Like I really like drawing like the kids' book scenes. And I really like drawing Cannonball, and whenever things get weird, like the color changes and stuff. And I really like drawing the end. But I was just like, nope, you gotta wait.
Yeah.
Like, because it's like, it's motivation to keep going.
Sure.
Yeah. So maybe that's why that method works for me.
Sure.
I think the other one would work too. Like, I want to try that on my next thing. Like whatever I feel like drawing that day to do it. But also like my thing with needing like the graph and all that, I probably would get all out of whack.
It's so interesting to me because when I grew up in comics, you know, obviously everything was serialized all the time.
Yeah.
Everything was.
Yeah.
Even alternative comics, you know,
Yeah.
Dan Clowes, Peter Bagg, all serialized.
Yeah.
And it's clear that most of them never had a plan. It was just whatever they were drawing that day, you know. And if it worked, it worked, and if it didn't, it didn't. But now you kids today,
I know kids.
you know. But I mean, it's all about this
We have
this
these
book, this like corpus of work, and
we have these platforms that allow us to do that. Like webcomics can be just serialized, but really it's like one big story.
Sure.
And you already know what happens instead of having to come up with new stuff all the time. I mean, you can, but yeah, like to me, I'm not necessarily thinking in the serialized notion, but I think like having the pauses that serialization like gives you, like to be like, okay, end of scene, end of this mini arc, is like kind of something I did try to replicate just a little bit, just by having chapters. But I mean, you could do that. Like you kind of have to do that.
But the problem with the book, it always is, and it's the same is true in prose.
Yeah.
As a reader, at least, I get to the chapter and I'm like, all right, well, I'll just read one page of the next chapter.
Yeah.
You know, and then you end up reading like, you know, chapter breaks I never stop with chapter breaks.
I know.
I'm sure some readers do, but
it's like binging a TV show versus watching one episode and then being like, okay, that's enough for you today. I don't think anybody can do that.
Go ahead, Sam.
It's like a Pringle.
With the two different styles of art between like the young adult novel and her story, was it hard to go back and forth between the two, or did you draw them and do them at separate times?
I did them at the same time, but I think it wasn't super hard because with my like freelance illustration work, I kind of just drew it in that closer to that style. So I already kind of work in two styles, and I'm kind of trying to figure out where they meet. Because again, like the comic stuff that comic style that I was going for with this one was like, okay, what is the purpose of comics? Like I want it to be read, I want it to be legible, so I kind of rely a little bit like on symbols, which includes like maybe some symbols that can be misinterpreted, but I wanted it to be like the legibility of the image was the most important thing. But then I started to realize I can fuck it up a little bit. But so that's why there's that one style in this book, and then the second style being closer to like editorial, where editorial is like, it like craves like a new interpretation. Because it's meant to add visual interest and not just be like a literal like thing usually. So I think that's why like these two things developed, these two like sort of execution styles, modes of execution. But yeah, I think whenever they kind of, and now I think they're kind of like converging back, like it's like following, like they were like this and now they're kind of coming like this. Yeah, but that's
where you take the parts and you synthesize them.
Yeah, and I think that in this book there is like that synthesis. There we go again. I get tongue-tied super easy.
No, it's okay. Fine.
Synthesization. I don't know if that's even a word. Synthesis of these two things. Because, again, that part was done on paper, which I think whenever I draw on paper, I just let myself go a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a real slickness to the style. There's a real, I don't know, studiedness to it that I like a lot in this book. And I'm wondering about your influences. I certainly see a lot of Klaus in here. And I also see a fair amount of kind of European comics.
Yeah.
So what do you read? Talk to me about that a little bit, about your influences.
It's hard to say because I feel like you just kind of become, especially like now because people are constantly looking at so many things at once. I think with the style for this book, I've always been super influenced by Klaus. And if I were to point in any singular direction, that would be it. But I think whenever you put these two things side by side, like obviously mine is much more like simple. But I'm not really sure like what directly I'm like thinking about whenever I'm drawing like these characters this exact way. I mean, there's even like, I would say some like anime influence there
Sure,
too.
absolutely.
And like just or almost like Hanna-Barbera kind of influence there too, because I've always kind of had this affinity for like those to like old cartoons, and I think that's kind of the direction I wanted it to feel a little bit like I don't know. I think that's what I was kind of referring to, like the symbols and like the use of limited color palette. And
Sure.
Like,
well, the palette for sure makes me think of those old cartoons a lot.
Yeah. I think that's something that I just have subconsciously always kind of referenced. But yeah, and like the cover feels kind of in that same vein too to me. But that's kind of the stuff that I think just sits in my brain. I don't think that whenever I'm approaching a work like this, that I'm like, I want it to look like X.
Right.
It just is whatever it is that I can do.
What
You know?
are you reading comics
Yeah.
yourself? I mean, no, because it's interesting. I ask a lot of cartoonists if they read comics, and a lot of them like, I don't have any time to read comics. What are you talking about?
Yeah. I mean,
I gotta draw them, man.
I've had more time recently since I finished the book, and obviously I just came back from TCAF with like a haul.
So who do you like these days?
I'm super like, I mean, goes without saying probably, but Mariko Tamaki and Rosemary Valero O'Connell's new book, Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, just like, I was like, and I also got Molly Mendoza's new book, Skip, which is, if you haven't checked that out, like her approach to comics making is that sort of like, is the thing that I kind of wish I could do, because it feels like very tangible and very like for my own work, like going into the stuff that I do for editorial, and she found a way to apply it to comics and still keep it like super like not legible is not the right word, but because I don't know if it means what I want it. What I mean is like you can read the narrative clearly, even though the art is abstract at times, which I guess is like that's not news. It's just something that I'm personally like afraid of doing. Let's see.
Well, there's plenty of people who are great draftspeople that I can't follow their storytelling at all. Their figure work is immaculate, but
I think there's probably a couple of camps of
absolutely,
where it's like, what do you care the most about, the art or the storytelling? And I think that art heavy comics are just as valid. It's just a different experience, and I tend to go narrative heavy, which I guess you know that. But yeah. Obviously, like I love Tilly Walden, so it's like really cool to, and let's see who else. I just went down like a couple of different paths. I got Emily Carroll's new book too.
Oh yeah,
it's like
was
super
nice.
good,
Yeah.
and Katie Skelly I like a lot too.
Yeah.
I like a lot of people. Yeah. And there, somewhere inside of me is a vampire book that wants to be written. I think, but I don't know what form it would take. That's my big secret. Yeah. Is that I just love vampires.
Okay, very good, very good.
Yeah, it's not a secret, but it's just like
an open secret now.
It's something that people know. It's like Buffy the Vampire Slayer is my favorite thing, and but I can never really bring myself to just indulge and just be like, fuck yeah, I'm just gonna write a vampire story,
Right?
Because I always feel like there's only so many things you can do with that, and they've probably all been done better than I could do it.
But could you see yourself pitching a Buffy the Vampire comic? There are certainly such things.
If you want me to, I could. I mean, I would love to do a variant cover, but but I don't. I mean, I guess I wouldn't go directly into like the licensed work unless asked to. But yeah,
Do you have any interest in doing that kind of comics work? Because it seems to me that's much more like your illustrator work, where you're trying to please a client rather than please yourself. You see what I mean.
Yeah, but it comes down to sort of also like what the book kind of goes into too. It's like it's a necessary evil. Yeah. But it's not necessary. You don't have to interpret it as evil, because I think that's why we always have Caroline as the titular character, but her friends are like living happily and like have found a way to create a work-life balance. Yeah. That she hasn't. So, and I think that I have done better than Caroline, because Caroline is like this, like I said, like this part of me that I guess, should I ever just like, I don't know, like collapse in on myself, like what would be like the worst possible thing.
Right. You seem a lot more adjusted.
Yeah. But yeah, wait, did I answer the question?
Yeah,
I don't remember what it was.
It's not like it needed a specific answer anyway.
Yeah, I just don't remember what it was.
It was work for hire. It was notionally,
Yeah, I mean notionally, because I do that. That's what I do for my job. But yeah, like if I were to pitch some sort of like fantasy, I think it's in there. I think I could do it. I'm trying to like do like this short right now that I want it to be like a vampire short, but I'm just like, I can't like figure out how to do this without making it feel cheesy.
Right.
I just love them so much, and I don't want to do it wrong.
Well, like anything, you just start drowning and you see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I guess we don't have to talk about like how like I want to preserve the integrity of vampire narratives. Yeah. Which, I think that's a losing battle, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I would kind of agree. Mm-hmm. Anything from you?
Where that battle was lost.
I have one, but you'd probably get mad at me for asking it because you always ask it.
No, go ahead.
So there's 2 words on the very back cover. So far.
Oh.
Are we gonna see a sequel?
I think so this is actually, that's a great question. So I, in like making minis like throughout my like life or whatever, I've kind of like always thought of them as being in the same universe. Like these are people that could possibly know each other. Like there's a character named Emily in this who's like, I mean, they're all mean. I love writing mean people, but Emily's like the one who shows up at the flea market and is like really like super judgmental of everything, but also doing it in such a way where it feels like if you read it without the stilt, you could be like, oh, out of context, this is positive. Right. So that character is actually from another short called Lemon. Okay. And Caroline has a cameo in that. Okay. And I kind of like want to continue that. So like I've started brainstorming like a new story, and I know that I want Caroline to have like a little like sort of neat little bow in there, where her next book is going to be called To Be Happy in You, and it's just kind of like shown in like advertising, like in this sort of world that I'm working on right now, which I don't have any idea what it's going to be, but I know that like I want her to find a solution, and I want to explore that, be it in a cameo form. But I don't think I would approach another narrative where she's like the titular character. Right. But I do think she's going to appear again. Yeah.
Okay, that's super cool.
Yeah.
And what are you working on right now? Since you said you already did a novella in between.
I have a big project that I don't know if I can talk about.
Okay.
But it's another book project that I'm doing with a friend.
Okay.
Not comics.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the meantime, I think I don't want to like rush what I do next. But I am super excited to do something.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like trying to figure out like what that would be. And like you asked earlier, like what if I could just do comics, would I? And the answer is yes. Like I wish I had just days on end to just sit and like daydream about like what could happen in these stories.
Yeah.
And like what would be the thing that I want to tell. But as it is, I just am like, okay, I have, on Thursday I'm going to come up with something.
Right.
Like that's just the way it has to be.
Yeah.
And it does like, light a fire under your ass or whatever, because deadlines are real. But, with this book, I kind of noodled with it for a while.
Yeah.
And it'll probably be the same for the next one, especially if it's this long. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a really strong book, and I would imagine that you'll have no lack of suitors for your next book at this point. You know,
I'll be the belle of the ball.
I would think so. No, I mean, I really would.
That's my dream.
This is strong stuff. It's really good stuff.
Even if it's a vampire romance.
Even if it's a vampire romance. That's fine. No, there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Caroline make an appearance in the vampire romance?
I don't know how I could work that in. I think that would be like a parallel universe. That's also, and it just doesn't feel like it would feel like good and fun, but maybe not like true and like something that I need to do in order to continue.
Right.
Which is what this book felt like.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it came off that way too. I mean, it really does feel real and true. And as I say, I certainly read a lot of first graphic novels, and almost all of them are terrible.
But that's fine.
But like anything else, no, it is fine. It is fine. I'm not saying that that's not
like
fine.
if this is my worst book, wouldn't that be great?
Right, exactly. You can't help but get better. What's the old saying that you've got 100 or 1,000 bad drawings inside of you? You've got to get them all out before you can start getting to the good ones.
Yeah.
And I think that's true with art in many cases. But you somehow managed to put together this really fantastic thing. I love it. I don't know. So I want to thank you for the book.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for the book, and I want to thank you for coming out and taking the time to talk to us. This is a really strong and powerful book, and if you're watching at home, I absolutely thoroughly recommend going out and getting a copy of Cannonball. You will be ecstatic. That's what I think. I want to thank you for coming out and taking the time to talk to us.
Great.
I want to thank you guys for coming out and taking the time to sit through this. I want to thank The Beat again for helping to sponsor the clubs. And I can say that next month's book, let me get it, is Genderqueer by Maya Kababi. Maya is going to be here on June 19th. So put that on your calendar. Also a fantastic book. We've just been having this string of great books lately. I don't know. It's amazing to me how much better comics have gotten, in the last decade or two.
I can't keep up.
Right? Right?
It's crazy.
Yeah, and in a good way though. Not in a I can't keep up, but like, wow, there's just so much good stuff out there, so much amazing material.
Yeah, it's probably, there's been an increase in like publishers willing to publish it, like major publishing houses are starting imprints. It's like only going to get more incredible, I think.
Yep. And then when we start looking at everything that amazing that's happening with kids comics, and just thinking about how all of those kids 15 years from now are going to be making their own comics, and everything's going to change then, you know? I said recently that, all the kids in 1965 dreamed of what they thought comics should be, and that's why comic shops are how they generally are. I mean, not like our comic shop is not very much like that, but I can't wait for the children of 2020 to dream about comics and dream about the future, because I think it's going to be fantastic. And I think you're going to be at the forefront of that. So, again, Cannonball, I'm Brian Hibbs. This was the Graphic Novel of the Month Club. Thank you so much for watching. And again, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for chatting with me.